And good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We're here at the next in the series of our Rising Star Leadership Conversations webinars. I'm delighted to see a lot of familiar names. I see Daniil is already welcoming everybody. Nice to see you, Daniil. Thank you for everyone here, everyone who's joined us today, and everyone who supports our programs. As you know, Rising Star is our program that recognises the most talented young professionals across South Africa, and it gives them a platform to connect and rise. It's also fabulous to see so many grad stars in the audience. Thank you again. As many of you know by now, one of our features of the Leadership Conversations series is the give back offer from these top CEOs, these top leaders. It's inspiring, it's amazing to see these busy people kindly donating their time to give back to the next generation. So for that, I would kindly like to thank our leader for today, Vukani, for offering a mentorship, I'll try and spit that out, a mentorship session. So please comment, I don't know why I struggled with that so badly. So please comment throughout the session, bring your A game, and make sure you're the one to be noticed. We will be checking the chat after, we will be going through the questions, and we will inform the winner. I mean, can you actually imagine spending 1 hour in the company of this man? It's incredible. And when will you get this opportunity again? So don't miss out on when opportunity knocks. We will be announcing the winners on social media. You'll see all the handles here. Another of my favorite features of the Leadership Conversations is the opportunity it gives us to feature some of our amazing rising stars. I mean, who better to facilitate such a meaningful session all about celebrating the next generation of talent than one of our very own rising stars. So on this note, I'd like to thank Kate Moodley, a rising talent in financial services. She was indeed the winner of the inaugural Financial Services Rising Star Award. She is franchise director at Discovery. She's a frequent winner of top performance awards. She's author, mother, wife, businesswoman. She's a true leader, future leader and leader. And she manages it all. So we look forward to her questions today. Thank you for your time and support, Kate. Now, going on to leadership. I mean, leadership is a challenging thing anyway, but now, in this time of uncertainty, this is when we can learn lessons, when true icons are born. I mean, this isn't a path that anyone's trodden before, nor is it a path that anyone expected to tread or even still be on today. There's no blueprints. We're addressing youth unemployment, rebuild SA, lockdowns, fourth waves, vaccinations, new variants, new technologies, need I go on. So what a time to be a leader and to be responsible for so many decisions and so many people. However, today we're welcoming a man who takes it all in his stride. Vukani, we're honored to welcome you today. Distinguished leader, CEO of Accenture Africa, the Commissioner for the Presidential Commission on the Fourth IR. Vukani is here today to give his perspective on leadership and learnings and what we can do to make South Africa a better place for all. A little bit about Vukani. He joined Accenture in 2000 after completing his studies, and he made his way to senior manager level. With over 20 years of consulting experience, Vukani brings extensive experience in various strategic roles, combining technical expertise and business acumen. He also understands the local market and has been delivering real value as well as impact for both public and private sector clients through innovative digital solutions. For all of those students out there who one day want to be Vukani, he holds a BCom degree in Business Information Systems and Accounting from the University of KZN. So guys, this is you. And he enjoys the outdoors when his busy schedule allows. So one more time, don't miss your chance to learn from this incredible man. 60 minutes is up for grabs. So comments, questions, we are listening, we are reading. I will come back on at the end to ask your questions. But in the meantime, Kate and Vukani, I'll leave it here. Nobody wants to hear any more from me. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you very much. I shall hand over to you, Kate, to lead the interview.
Thank you, Laura, for the introduction. Welcome, Vukani. It really is nice to meet you again. It's absolutely wonderful to be given this opportunity to have a conversation with you. You know, in my view, Vukani, you're really an iconic leader, not just in your role as CEO for Accenture, but just from a broader South African perspective. You really have shown some amazing stances. You've really showed amazing value in terms of the innovation space and just your leadership roles in general. So your story or your narrative certainly instills a lot of hope in many South Africans. And if I sort of look at across the board, it's individuals that have completed a degree that's entering the workspace, even to individuals that have specifically sort of created some form of trajectory in their career. But this journey obviously started somewhere, and I'm really excited to hear about where has young Vukani started, and how did you get to the CEO of Accenture itself?
Well, firstly, let me say thank you to you, Laura, for the invite, and thanks, Kate, for agreeing to host. I know you'll be asking me questions, but at some stage I'll get the opportunity to ask you questions, hopefully as well. So look, the story of Vukani is a story of a typical South African black man. You know, I grew up in KZN and spent the majority of my formative years, you know, in rural KZN. Now, some of you may know the place, but I was born and bred in a rural town called Ikobo in the south coast of KZN. Later on, we moved to Durban, Mlazi. So if there's some people here that come from Mlazi, you are definitely from home. So look, like I mentioned, growing up in KZN, nothing special. You know, I completed high school, and then went to university. I went to UKZN, like Laura mentioned. I had a dream of becoming a chartered accountant. I kind of thought that I was very good in accounting, and generally did very well at school. So, you know, with my accounting grades and my math grades, I thought, you know, this should be the right trajectory for me. So of course I did BCom. I signed up for accounting. I signed up for all the rest of it. But somehow, somewhere, some smart lady told me, why don't you do information systems as well? Yeah. So I ended up with both accounting and information systems at university. And I was lucky enough to still do well at university. And Accenture came on campus and they were recruiting folks, you know, and they tended to look for really good grades, and I had them, and was lucky enough to land a job in Accenture. So when I finished university in 1999, I was doing my postgrad, and I landed in a job in Accenture. And 2000, beginning of 2000, I started at Accenture, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Well, it sounds like an incredible narrative. I did see in your sort of career pathway that in 2006 you took a little bit of a break to explore something else. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Hey, you read too much, Kate. Anyway, it's true. So
only if you're comfortable.
I spent a good 10 years or so in Accenture. And by then I had become a senior manager inside the firm. And then I found a very interesting opportunity to start my own company with a friend. So I left Accenture for about 3 years. I was away, and I was doing business in KZN with a good friend of mine. And we did consulting work. So I never left consulting because this is sort of the industry I know well. And we did good work for a good 3 years in KZN, and when 2009 hit, some of you will recall 2009 was not very great for many of us, and business dried up. Accenture had been knocking on my door still and said, "Do you want to come back? Don't you want to come back?" And this time around, I'm the one that picked up the phone and said, "Actually, do you still have that job?" Yeah. And I returned in Accenture beginning of 2010, and I made director 2 years later in 2012. Subsequently, I became CEO in 2018.
Yes. Well, it seems like you found your spiritual home, as many would say, right?
Indeed.
You know, the interesting perspective, while you're sharing your story, it's really about sort of the time that you've spent building up your career. And I think I'm probably a good example of it. We are quite impatient when we're building something great. And I think it's initially you kind of focus on goals versus sort of growth, and you kind of navigate to that sort of perspective. But I remember prior to joining Discovery, I'd actually come across an article written by Adrian Gore, and he spoke about the definition of success. And he said that success is actually not a destination, but it's a marathon. What advice would you give individuals that are entering the job market or have been in a role for a long time or within a specific organization? Do you stick it out? Do you continue? Is it a tenured discussion, or is it about getting a multitude of experience that counts more in terms of ultimately getting to a level like yourself?
Well, I have probably three answers to that question. And I'll try and make it succinct. So the first one is that I really do believe that you should do what you enjoy. As you rightfully put it, Kate, career is a marathon, and it's a journey. Okay, you really don't want to be stuck with a role or with work that you really do not enjoy. Okay, so I've been a consultant all my life, and I really enjoy this work. You know why? I've never done a project which looks the same more than once. So every time is something new for me. So I've learned. I've done work for so many organizations out there personally. When I started out, I was in public service, I was in health, I was doing all sorts of things. And every time I go into a new environment, I learn something new. And that so happens that in consulting, you never do the same project twice, or I've never had to, even if it's similar work, even if it's IT work, implementation of technologies, the context is always different, and therefore you always learn something new. And I love that. So I enjoy doing what I'm doing. So I think that for me is the most critical part, that you got to do something that you enjoy. The second part I would say is it has to obviously add to what you're trying to achieve. Now, I've always wanted to be successful. I never thought success means CEO. So let me just be clear. But I always wanted an upward trajectory in life, and I defined myself what I thought I needed to achieve. And every time I do a piece of work, or I go into a project, or I take on the next piece of work, it has to add something towards what I want to achieve. Otherwise, why do it in the first place? So you therefore need to be structured and be careful about what you're trying to do in your career, and make sure that the pieces of work that you're doing actually add up to that. Otherwise, it's kind of a waste of time. And then the last thing I would say is that for me, doing business is more than just waking up every morning and just going to work. It has to fill a purpose that you live for as an individual. And for me, this is so important, because I like to feed myself, I like to feed my soul, okay? And doing purposeful work and being clear about what that purpose is probably one of the most important things I'd say.
It's powerful. If you kind of, you're talking about purpose-driven sort of leadership, right? You get up. If you really think about it, it is sort of leading yourself. It's having this ability to get up and doing something that you really, really love. Is there any extrinsic factors? When I talk about extrinsic factors, if it's people or a specific scenario that inspires you to get up every single day and do what you do, are there things that motivate you, apart from Vukani being a disciplined individual that's focusing on progress? What other factors would you say inspires you to be who you are?
Well, I'm inspired by a lot of things, Kate. I'll share with you that my family is a big inspiration for me. So I have 3 daughters. Now, any one of you here who have daughters will know what that means. They demand finer things in life. and part of me waking up has to do with making sure that I can be a good father to my children and to my wife as a husband and to my family. So that's one big motivator for me. The second big one, I'll tell you, is myself personally. I always saw myself achieving success just as a human being, and waking up every morning looking forward to fulfilling my purpose, which I believe is creating sustainable or substantial growth in the space where I'm operating for, maybe a company or maybe people that are around me. I like to see them, elevate and grow as individuals. And it's a mega motivator for me, because I believe that if I have the power or the means, I've got the ability to help someone grow out there, I have the opportunity to do so. Now, today in Accenture, I have that opportunity. May it be clients that I work with, may it be people that I lead inside my organization, giving them the opportunity and hope that they can be something on this earth is a big motivator for me.
Thank you. So, Vukani, it seems as though it reflects something really authentic about yourself. It seems as though that's a big part of who you are. So I remember 2 years back, I actually attended a lecture by Professor Tom DeLong, who is a Harvard Business School lecturer, and he spoke about this concept of authenticity, right? And he says that in order for organizations to truly thrive, they need to be led by leaders that have this ability to sort of integrate their head and heart. And there were studies actually that we had gone through specifically that revealed there was a direct correlation between individuals that were authentic to the output of the organization. If you had to reflect on sort of key attributes of what makes a good leader, can you maybe just take us through that? And also, who in your sort of circle or the exposure that you've had, who would you sort of identify as an incredible leader in your space?
You mentioned one, but let me say I have probably 4 attributes, Kate, which I really think are critical, and they talk to me personally. One of them you've mentioned, which is authenticity. I really believe that in order for one to lead and lead well, they have to be true to who they are. You can't be someone else. You can't try to live or to exhibit leadership capabilities of someone else, because you're not them. You don't know how they think. You don't live inside them. So you only be the best of yourself. And I think that this is very important. Many people try and emulate others. And my point of view is that that's probably not the right recipe for success. You want to be who you are. God made you great as you are today, and you should not try and be someone else. So that's my point of view. The second one is clarity. I really think that great leaders are clear in what they are trying to do, in what they are trying to achieve, in what they want in life, in what they are living for, and in what they need to do, therefore, to achieve that which they wanna achieve. So, by the way, this clarity, if you have it for yourself, you tend to have it also for the company. So there's personal clarity, which is about who Vukani is, what does he want to achieve, and what's important and what matters to me personally. And if you're clear normally about these kind of things, you can therefore build a strategy for the company. Many folks who aren't clear about what they want in life cannot really build something sustainable for organizations. You have to master yourself in order to master the organization that you're with. The third point is leading with empathy. I find that, empathy is a very strong leadership trait when you are working with people. Now, every leader will be leading folks out there. And if you don't have empathy, if you cannot wear someone else's shoes and understand what's going on in their personal spaces, in their lives, etc., and that's what could be the reason for them to behave in the way that they do, etc., and the likelihood of executing great as a leader could be compromised. And then the last one, which I think is critical, is ethical leadership. I really believe that, I always say to my people inside of Accenture that we will never see Accenture in front of the Zondo Commission. I know they've finished their work now, so we probably won't go there anyway. But the truth is, by design and by the things that we do as a company and us as leaders and myself as a leader personally will make sure that we don't do wrong things. I kind of live with this notion that you should do the right thing even if there is no one watching. And this is both personal and business-wise. And I really think this is important. Our country needs this type of leadership. We see every day, we hear corruption this, corruption that. And my point of view is that the reason why we see all of these things is because leaders who we put in positions of power do not lead with ethics.
Vukani, just taking it a step further, there's always blame in terms of this concept of ethical leadership. We sort of say people that are in positions of power, government, certain individuals in the private sector, but I take it a step further. I think as it goes down to civil society, if every single one of us played our part in this picture, I think we'd be a lot further. And a simple example would be if you, in a position where you sort of asked by a cop to sort of bribe them. I mean, I've been in several of those examples. Do you pay the ticket or do you sort of bribe the cop to get the situation going? And the choice is always to do the right thing. And I think it's not aiding a situation that's already corrupt and it's already in a difficult position. So I think it really goes down to each individual in society or in South Africa itself that plays their part to this bigger picture. And I think we're quite synonymous of sort of playing the blame game on every single individual. So it's critical that we sort of take accountability and we take responsibility for it. It's critical to sort of understand what's your leadership style and what sort of navigates you. And I love the fact that you spoke about clarity and ethical leadership. For me, those stand out exceptionally high. And obviously looking into from the perspective of authenticity. If you sort of journey back, you've sort of spent time in different roles, in different leadership positions. What would be the leadership lessons that you've learned that could sort of benefit us in terms of understanding how you navigated through it and or leadership situations that placed you in difficult positions, and how did you navigate through it?
Well, Kate, I've learned so many things over the past. I've been working for 22 years now, and you can imagine that I've had quite a few experiences, but one that I think is worth sharing with the participants here today is that it's really okay to be vulnerable. We as people think that if I say I don't know, or I'm not sure about this, or I need help, that you somehow are not a good leader, or you're not exhibiting traits that are expected of someone in a senior role or something of that sort. And I've learned that actually it's quite the opposite. When I stand up and I say to guys, to my team, that I actually don't know the answer, can you help me figure it out? We always, without fail, come together, we sit in a room and we thresh it out until we find a solution. And now part of that also says, if you're the leader or you're the boss, I don't like the word boss because I'm bossing no one. I always kind of say, you don't necessarily have the privilege of knowing everything. And when you try and pretend that you know everything, that's where, number one, you lose trust in the people that you're working with. And number two, you typically get to non-optimal solutions because you're trying to solve everything by yourself. And we know that there is no one in this life who has the privilege of knowing everything.
It's critical. I mean, if you think about the last 18 months, I suppose everyone's spoken about COVID to death. I mean, if you really think about it, but it's really placed, I think, every single person in this vulnerable position that you're referring to. But I think specifically from a leadership perspective, I think the truth is when the stakes are really high, there isn't actually a playbook as to how you should handle it, right? I did love, you put out a very good note subsequent to the looting, and you actually quoted the former Ghanaian president, Kwame Nkrumah, and You said, action without thought is empty, and thought without action is blind. Now, if you reflect on the last 18 months, Vukani, how has your leadership style and how did you change and become more agile within the environment that you were the cards that we were dealt with? I mean, we all had to sort of transform within the last 18 months. How would you say your leadership sort of style and stance, and how did that change over the last 18 months?
It's a very good question, actually, because I never reflected on that. But I think a few things have been, interesting for me, and kind of, realizing the impact that COVID has had on people. So I would say the first one for me has been the importance of being close to the people. COVID has changed many things in our lives, in our working environments. So what I have been doing, deliberately so, is to encourage all of my people and all of my leaders to spend a significant amount of time being close to our folks. I mean, I run an organization of 1,500 people or so, and they're all working from home. They used to be connected in projects and in office, etc. Now they, by themselves, it has created a significant strain in how we connected as the people. So devising ways in which we connect with people has been a big change, I think, on my part, and actually just picking up a phone call and phoning the youngest of my analysts and say, hey, how are you doing today? Firstly they get shocked with it, why is Vukani calling me? And then I say, no, you haven't done anything wrong. I just want to know just want to know how you're doing, how you're keeping, are you holding up? Is everything all right? And I think that's so critical to help, in the space we're in, just to create more connection with the folks that we're leading. So that'd be the one. And then I would say I've been even more clear about the challenges that we're now facing as a company and as a nation around mental wellness. And I think that many leaders do not see this as well as I do now, and something that we should talk more about, that COVID has, let me say, showed us that it's so critical for us to look after and protect our mental wellness. You know, I'll share with you that I actually see a shrink myself, you know, and it's okay. Many people, especially in this country, do not believe that, or believe that seeing a therapist is a sign of weakness. I actually think it's a sign of strength.
It's quite the opposite, yeah.
And we should really encourage people to have someone that they talk to, especially when they experience difficulties in their own personal space. And you know, COVID is exacerbating this, and we should really tell people that it's okay to talk to someone and share how you feel. So, and then the last thing about this is said, it's even more important for me that organizations lead with purpose. And we as leaders even need to drive that impact of purpose even more. Why do I say that? Because, you know, during COVID-19, we weren't making profits, okay? And in fact, most of our businesses were regressing, okay? But we needed to be even more purposeful then, because when you are not being driven by the desire to maximize profits, what else drives you? You know, and unless you have a clarity of purpose, it's very likely that you wouldn't be thinking in the right direction. So purposeful leadership becomes even more critical in these days.
Absolutely critical. You know, it's interesting because we, within our organization itself, we paid a lot of attention to the mental illness side, you know, sort of managing our own base to sort of understand how many people have actually committed suicide or were exposed from that perspective. And it was really quite a tragic situation. I think the reality is that there was a couple of positives that came out of the pandemic. I think it made us more connected as individuals. I think previously we ran businesses operationally, you know, we ran it strategically, and we didn't really connect at every single level. And I think being on Zoom or using the electronic platforms, it allowed us to sort of connect a lot more with people. And we specifically used it as a strategy within our space. You know, Vukani, there's a lot of leaders that will be stepping into leadership roles that might not necessarily have your experience, and that the experience in terms of agility, in terms of the resilience to sort of continue doing it, irrespective of the organization not meeting its profit margins, and trying to sort of keep things together. What would be the advice that you would give to future leaders to sort of equip them to sort of work in this new norm? I mean, the world of work has certainly changed. It's not going to be exactly the same, where our connectivity is greater, we can do things with expediency. What would be your advice to the new leaders sort of embracing this new world of work?
I would say that number one, look after yourself, both physically and mentally. No one can pour from an empty cup. So this is you start there by making sure that you're healthy, that you're looking after yourself properly. I ran 10 kilometers this morning. I want to say that the tough times that we're in, they are not going to go away fast. Okay, and we should understand this and internalize it in order for us to wire ourselves differently. Now there are leaders out there or even if it's not leaders, just folks out there who think there's going to be a post-COVID stage and things are going to return to normal. Okay, if you are thinking like this, lose that. because we aren't going to return to normal. What we used to know as normal, there's a new normal now, which is going to be very different from the world that we knew before. In fact, we know it's already very different. I used to go on an aircraft traveling to some country every other month, every month. I haven't traveled in 18 months, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And I'm doing quite well with being here and doing everything that I need to do from South Africa. And this is important to understand and wire yourself with a view that things are going to be very different. To a new leader, I'd say, be mindful how you treat people. Every organization is made up of people, and people are the greatest asset of any organization or any company. And how people get treated is paramount. And then the last thing I would say, and this is number one, is every leader requires to create trust. So if you're a leader and you're looking to become successful as a leader, you have to be trusted by those that you lead. And if you are not trusted, I can guarantee you that your leadership tenure is either going to be very small or it's going to be very tumultuous. So my view is trust. By the way, the trust equation, for those of you who don't know, trust equation is you do what you say, and you do what you say consistently. So whatever promises you make, they must always be met, and there must be a clarity of that, the fact that you are actually doing what you said you were going to do. So now organizations need to be sure that they create a very strong trust quotient amongst their leaders and between the leadership teams plus the rest of the organization.
Absolutely true. And I think, our human capital in South Africa is probably our greatest asset, right, Vukani, if you think about it. So we have to really nurture, invest, and sort of grow our talent.
Yeah.
And I realize that you are extremely passionate about this. And in one of your interviews, you spoke about, you made a specific statement where you said that South Africa does not have an unemployment issue, but we have a skills shortage issue. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, because it is a bold statement. And I'd love to see I'd love to understand what your thinking is behind it.
Look, it's very simple. I just say that I look at my own company. I mean, we hire 1,500 people, but we probably have, 3,000 jobs. So the other 1,500 jobs are being fulfilled by other countries. Okay, so we send jobs to India, we send jobs to the Philippines, we send jobs Lord knows where. I mean, I can tell you that it's probably the same thing with your own company, Kate. Yeah. I know that for the fact that other competitors of mine, the Deloittes, the Ernst & Youngs, they all using global entities or global delivery centers to execute South African jobs. And that's where my statement comes from. Why do we go away from South Africa and run to India, run to the Philippines to execute work? It's because of two reasons. One, we cannot find skills in South Africa. And even if we do, they cost 3 times more than what a skill set in India, the same skill, would cost. So what would you do if you are a smart businessman? You'd go to where you find skills at the cheapest possible pay point, right? And that's what's happening in our country. Let's be just frank about it. So I'm not denigrating the fact that, the jobs that we have today may not necessarily absorb every South African who's out of employment or who's not employed. But I simply make a statement that if we were to build skills in the spaces where we need skills in South Africa today, we would probably employ easily 400 to 500,000 more people. And that's the statement that I make. But you know, and Kate, let me just finish this point because it's important. We are not talking about other nations using South Africans to deliver work or to do work. No, we're just talking about us, South Africa, using South Africans to deliver South African jobs. Now imagine if we create this opportunity for South Africans that they could actually service the West. You know, we've got good command of the English language here. We've got good math and science. We've got good capabilities in country. We need to nurture them and grow them so we can export them. Now, suddenly, you're not talking about employing 500,000 people anymore. You're talking about millions. That's what I'm talking about.
But how do we bridge the gap, though, between the sort of individual that has completed a tertiary education to the working world? Because there is a gap. And how is Accenture and how have you done it in your space specifically? And I speak about it more in line with mentorship, because mentorship has always been topical. It's about transferring of skills, transferring of business understanding, etc. How have you done it in your space specifically?
You're right. There is a gap between you leaving university and executing in real life, or even for that matter, high school. But, you know, I don't think that South Africa has a problem in that part, to be quite frank, Kate. We know how to bridge the gap, and we've done it many times. I'm one of those that, you know, the gap was bridged for, and therefore I'm in employment. And many of the people who are in jobs today, what we have a problem with is to do it for the masses of our people who aren't employed and do it at scale. So here's what we do. Accenture takes 200, 300 people every year. We skill them up in a specific. I recently announced that I've taken 200 people. I'm skilling them up in Salesforce. Why? Because Salesforce is going to have the biggest demand in this country. We know that for sure. So I'm skilling people up in Salesforce, 200 of them. But think about it. We should not be skilling 200. We should be skilling 50,000. Okay? Because if you skill 50,000, maybe you use 10,000, 20,000 here in South Africa, you offer the 30,000 to the world. Why? Because we know for a fact that the world needs these skills. What do we do? What's the issue? The issue is I skill my own 200, and I think I've done enough. What we should be doing is to think about South Africa about this thing as a South Africa problem. We need to pool our resources. We need to create delivery centers here in this country. If we could just build one delivery center that just skilled people in Salesforce, we know we'll bridge the gap, which was your point, but we even know that we can use those skills in South Africa and also send them offshore. I just spoke about one skill base, which is Salesforce. Now you can do this for cloud, you can do this for any other skill which we know is in demand in South Africa and in the world.
And across different industries.
And across different industries, precisely. I mean, just think about GBS, Global Business Services, which is the business of contact centers and provision of customer service, right? South Africa has got a significant skill base to be able to do this. Yeah? And we should be able to do it at pace. I mean, I read the other day that the Americans and the Australians do not find skills anymore. I'm thinking, geez, we have so many of our people here. Yeah, in South Africa, I read a joke this morning. It's not a joke, it's quite sad that people here would graduate and even forgot what they studied because they stayed unemployed for 5-10 years. After graduating, you know, we should be using those skills and providing global business services to the world. You know, and what do we need? We need imagination. We need to be smart, we need to be sharp, and we need to broaden the horizon and not solve for ourselves in our little corners, but to solve for the nation.
I mean, Vukani, mentorship is clearly plays a significant role. You know, I sort of briefly touched on it. Have mentors in your, I mean, did you have a series of mentors in your journey? And do you think they played a role in shaping who you are as an individual and how far you've come in life in terms of your role within Accenture itself?
Absolutely, Kate. I've had both formal and even today I still have mentors. Yeah. Today, I mean, I have a global mentor who's a guy that works for Accenture, And I'll share with you, the guy that I love to bits is Bonang Mohale. Okay, he's my mentor today. Okay, I chose him because I thought that he exhibits some of my own traits in terms of leadership. But the point I wanted to share with you is that everybody needs support. You, me, everyone else needs to have some level of support in their careers or in their journeys, because, like I said, we should be humble enough to know that we don't know everything, and to know that there are people out there who can help us, who can share thoughts and ideas that will help us to become someone else. So throughout my career, I've always had mentors. In Accenture, we have a formal mentorship program. So you can imagine that most corporates do. But I've always gone beyond that, because I think formal mentorship can sometimes be limiting, because it's not just about work that you need to be mentored, it's just sometimes about life in general. So I seek mentors even outside of work, people that I like, people that I think I connect with, mentally, and that I just, that are an inspiration to me.
So, Vukani, in terms of your network of individuals, it's probably easy to reach out to find the individual, have access to the individual that you want to mentor you. What advice would you give to a young individual that's coming into the workforce? How do they sort of have access to a specific mentor if it's someone that they sort of respect and they admire? Because as we know, the time with CEOs are quite limited, and I'm sure you will agree that you can't mentor every single person that approaches you. How do they go about in sort of getting that network right, or sort of tapping into that network and approaching people? Sort of
listen, Kate. There's no formula for this. Here's what I'll share with you my own experiences, what I've done. Okay, so firstly, many people out there, when you ask them to mentor you, they generally would say yes. I'm yet to find someone who would say no to a request for mentorship, unless they really have a time constraint. Okay, but I encourage folks just to reach out to those people who they believe would be meaningful to them in terms of mentorship. But also I think just don't be scared, man. Just pick up the phone.
What's the worst that can happen? They could say no.
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
Let me tell you guys a funny story. Okay, so the group CEO of Accenture, global CEO, was a guy called Bill Green. This is some time back in the day. Now, this is a big guy, okay? He's not by size, but I mean by role, okay? He's a group CEO of the firm. At that time, I was a manager in Accenture. So I wrote an email to him. I said, Bill, you have achieved so much. I'd like you to coach me, okay? And I said, I asked for one meeting per year, if he can spare me. He responded and he said, I'll give you 4.
Sure. Better than anticipated.
And it is true that I had those. He would ask his PA to schedule a meeting with me. I'm a youngster in South Africa. He would schedule a meeting with me, give me half an hour and say, okay, we talk about anything. So I had to be very careful in using that time, but I'm just giving you a sense of how easy it is for people to provide assistance if you ask for it. The trick is just ask.
Yeah, and I think every person that's in a leadership role wants to give back, Vukani. That's my personal view, especially if I think of my own sort of leadership journey. Whenever I'm given an opportunity to mentor, I also absolutely agree, and I'm happy to do so. The two things that sort of reminisce with me when I'm in that mentorship space with people is that I kind of ask them two things. Are you really happy in terms of what you're doing? And what I mean by that is that you really have to find meaning, and you've got to find the love in the process of what the journey that you're following. And the second element is really about finding meaning in terms of what you're doing, in terms of giving back. But I think ironically, when we focus on the success journey, it is quite difficult. So in my view, you really have to transition from success and embrace significance. And it sort of talks to the whole concept of mentorship and giving back. If you look at your organization, and it doesn't have to be specific to you, how have you and your team paid it forward in terms of South Africa itself? What have been the examples where you've paid it forward?
Yeah, I'm thinking of probably 3 or 4 things that we're really doing to pave it forward. One topic that's very close to my heart, Kate, is diversity and inclusion. Okay, so we as leaders sitting in the roles that we sit in, if we do not understand the importance of driving diversity and inclusion at workplace in South Africa today, we are missing a significant opportunity. So that's what I'm doing with my leadership team. We are driving significant change in my business. I actually sent out targets in October last year where I said in 5 years, Accenture would be 70% Black. Why? Because we live in a country that's 70% Black, or maybe more. It's probably 80-odd%. And if we do not understand that we have to change the dynamics in our companies to reflect what's going on in the country we live in, we're just not being smart. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I am investing in leadership talent that is thriving on ethical leadership. Because, here's what I believe, you can build a company and make it very strong, and it takes 1 or 2 rotten apples to destroy the company. So we're going to make sure that we do not lose a chance to continuously educate and remind our folks the importance of being ethical in everything that we do. We do not steal. We do not do wrong things. We do not do brown envelopes. We are doing ethical business in this country because this is the right thing to do, not only in this country, but the world over. So this is critical for us, and making sure that people, are careful about this. And then the last thing is that we're putting people ahead of profits. Now, let me tell you what I mean by this. We are looking after people's careers, because you and me want career growth. And if we don't invest in people, in their training, in their promotions, in their education, we're sending people to go do MBAs in my company. We're sending people to go do proper skills in the spaces where they need to be trained in order for them to have the right levels. Now, those people may not work for Accenture in 2, 3, 4, 5. We wish that they do, but if they didn't, they would have learned something that's important for themselves as individuals and therefore important for our country. So we believe it's important to put people ahead of profits and go train our folks. And then the last thing is that we want to enhance the purpose-driven thinking and leadership. So Accenture has a purpose as an organization. I make sure of that. Why? Because unless you have a clear purpose of what the company is living for, you then live for money.
Yeah.
And living for money, according to me, is the worst thing you can do to a business.
And it's temporary. It's
temporary. And look, you can have all the money in the world. Let me tell you, even thieves have money, So, but unless you are purposeful in what you're doing, and the purpose is a good purpose, then money will follow you. That's our belief. And therefore, this is why we are saying we're building an organization that thrives on purpose, which is driving excellence in our country and creating growth. And if we believe this is the right thing, creating growth is for our people, is for our citizens, is for our clients, is for our communities. And if we do this right and we do it well, we will always make money as a consequence of doing right things in our nation.
I think the point that sort of stands out for me today is really the principle of ethical leadership. I think it's absolutely critical in South Africa, and I think we've come off a really, really challenging couple of years in terms of everything that's happened. You know, people have lost trust, and they've lost their sort of own sort of navigation in terms of what is ethical leadership. Vukani, really, you shared a lot today, and I think for me personally, I've learned a lot, and I'm very grateful for it. In saying that, what would be your departing sort of pearls of wisdom to everybody that's listening today? I mean, you spoke from ethical leadership, you spoke about competency, transferring of skills. You seem extremely optimistic, and I love that. I think we need more individuals like yourselves that's committed to this bigger picture and that's committed to transforming South Africa. What would be your sort of departing words to everybody that's listening today?
I would share three things. I'd say you need to be prepared to learn every day. This journey we're in is about learning. I'm learning every day, and you don't need to learn from senior people only. I learn from analysts. I mean, the other day I had an analyst teaching me blockchain. One of our youngsters was spent 1 hour with me and sharing with me what they're doing to build a blockchain solution for Africa, and it's just amazing stuff. So you have to be prepared to learn in order to improve your leadership journey and your general intellect as an individual. Very critical. I would say you need to be an inspiration to others through the things that you say and through the things that you do. Why? Because everybody out there is looking for someone to inspire them in a way. I mean, your leader, Kate, is a true inspiration to me. The things he says, the things he does, you know, he opened up discovery for vaccination for all South Africans. I took my second shot at your offices in Sandton, you know, at no cost to the nation. Yeah. And these are the type of things which are about, you know, being purposeful and living a purposeful life. That comes across, you know, every time he opens up his mouth, you know. And I think there's something to be said about being an inspiration and seek to inspire, not just yourself, but others as well. And I would close off by saying that leadership is about, for me, three things: clarity of thought, execution, do what you say you're going to do, and extreme level of vulnerability when you need to. Like I mentioned earlier, people trust you more, and they get more confidence in you when you are able to have what I call inclusive leadership. And inclusive leader does not know everything, is not expected to know everything, and is able to help create a much stronger connection with the people in this way.
Thank you. Thank you, Vukani. You truly have been inspiring to every single one of us. And thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. Yeah, Laura, over to you, because I'm sure you have a series of questions for Vukani.
I do. Thank you both. There's a lot of love for both of you in the chat. Kate, I think you're extremely well spoken, extremely well researched. You've conducted a fabulous interview. So thank you. I think that too. But thank you.
Thank you.
And Vukani, there's a little motion in the chat saying Vukani for president. Don't know what you think.
You mean if you say president of Accenture, I'll take it. I don't know about the other president.
Maybe one day we'll see you there. It's been a true amazing session, and there's so much engagement in the chat. There's lots of conversation about the themes. Authenticity, clarity, empathy. I've just pulled away so much. My takeaway words would definitely be ethical and authentic, I think. And this has been a true authentic discussion. But there's a few little questions I want to bring up. Tata would like to know, are there any specific human qualities that you would deem to be vital to achieve growth such as yours?
I think, yes, absolutely. One is I've always been a learner. I mentioned that just now, and I think that opening yourself, I read so much. I'm always doing something to feed myself with knowledge, and I think that's so important in the world we live in, to understand and to help yourself expand your own point of views. So I kind of read everything, So recently, by the way, I tell you, if you are a parent and you are raising girls like me, I have a 16-year-old, by the way, so I have a teenager now at home, and she locks herself in her room and she's on her mobile devices the whole time. So I wanted to figure out, because I don't understand this, I wanted to figure out what the hell. So I read a book called Battle Hymn of a Tiger Mother. I don't know if you know this book. It's by a lady called Amy Chua. It's been so amazing for me to understand how, ladies think, and how, have a different way of raising children. But anyway, so I like to learn and pushing a little bit of myself to figure out new things. The second trait that I think is important is is this point about humility. Okay. Humble does not mean that you are a pushover. Yeah? It means that you allow yourself to lead with a sense that other people, you could have other people who know better than you. And that's okay. That's a good thing. Humility is a word that I like, and I actually think that you could utilize humility for your benefit. I'll give you a good example of how I personally use it. I use it to surround myself with people who want to help me create success. And I also use it to surround myself with people who are smarter than me, because they give me ideas that I typically wouldn't have had. And I utilize some of those thoughts in building a stronger leadership base for myself. Yeah. So humility is a very, very important trait, I think. And then the last one I would say is, it's so important for me that you exhibit trustworthy tendencies in what you do. You need to be trustworthy as a human being, because that translates straight into who you are as a leader. So people who aren't trustworthy, do you want to work for them? I don't, If there's someone who is leading the business and I get a glimpse that they are not really a trustworthy person, I probably would jump. Okay, so for me, those are the three important traits.
Amazing, amazing. And to just follow on from that, you've answered it as a whole, but more specifically, Gopika, says, do you have any specific advice you can offer young adults on how they can master themselves? Which is just a follow on from what you were saying, I think.
I don't know what it means to master yourself. You never do. I don't think you ever do. You know, I think, I really think that in this life we live, we are in a constant learning journey. You know, I'm always learning something new, you know. So I don't even want to say I've mastered myself today, because I probably haven't. But I would say the advice I would give is keep on improving yourself in whatever way that you believe makes sense for you and for your career and for your life. Keep on improving it.
Absolutely, keep on learning. I'm going to jump back to books, because it's kind of what we're talking about, and you mentioned books. It's Book Week next week. What is there a specific book, or maybe two books, that you would recommend for these young people in the audience that can help them with self-mastery, with their career, with personal development? Is there anything that's worked for you?
I enjoyed a book by I'm thinking of the Jeff Colvin, spelled with a G, Geoff. The name of the book is Talent is Overrated. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but I loved it. You know why? So if you haven't, just read it. It's lovely because it talks about why kind of we always respect people who with highest level of intellect, but it's not always intellect that makes people succeed. There is a lot more that's required for success as opposed to just intellect.
What are the nuggets? What's required? Well, I think you've actually covered it.
Well, you need all the stuff that you spoke about, and you need a fair amount of luck.
Absolutely, right place, right time.
You could do all these things that you spoke about and still not be successful, because we don't know. But there is a fair amount of luck that you must have on your side to be successful as well. That's what the author argues. So it's quite an interesting one.
Awesome. I've definitely noted it down for our book week recommendations and to check out myself. School holidays are coming up. I also have children. They're not as old as yours, though. So maybe I'll take your parenting book advice. I feel like I need to ask a question from Melosi, because Melosi has been very active in the chat. So we're going to start with, have you ever faced rejection, Vukani? And if so, how do you move through that?
My wife rejected me first when I approached her. So yes, but she's married to me now. but let me say yes. I frankly I've been rejected a number of times, and you know, the reality is. How do I put this? The reality is, we should expect rejection in life. Okay, and it's part of life. I see it. Okay, and the difference is how you deal with it and what you do when you feel that you have been rejected. Yeah. And I do something very simple for myself. I pick myself up and seek better opportunities. Or in the case of my wife, I keep asking.
How many times did you have to ask, Vukani?
I had to send flowers. I had to do all sorts of interesting things.
But you won the game.
But I won the game.
Awesome. I see we're coming up to time. I've enjoyed this very much. I'm just gonna And everybody in the audience who's seen me do this many times will probably predict what question I'm going to ask next, because I always ask it. If you could go back to Vukani, age 18, maybe just out of varsity, maybe he's just starting his career, what words of advice would you give to early career Vukani?
Yeah, that's a tough question, eh? So I would say I'd advise myself to not study accounting because it's been useless in my career. Well, not useless really, but I never used that. But it was such a stressful part of my life. So I would, but on a serious note now, I would probably tell myself these two things. One is believe in yourself. Okay, I had a long journey of not believing that I'm capable, that I can do it, that I have everything that I need to be successful. Kind of, the self-doubt that you have as people, it's always there. I mean, it was always there for me, and I could have shaken that off a lot earlier. Yeah. And then the second one that I think is also key for me is that I should have thought about who Vukani is and what my purpose is on this earth sooner. I probably would have done a lot of things a bit differently, and clarity of thought about what it is that I really think I'm here for, and what difference can I make as a human being is probably paramount at the moment. And it's kind of how I think, it influences decisions I take every day, this purpose-driven life. And I'd like to say that, probably I would have advised myself to think about that sooner.
That's a good one. I've got goosebumps. I know you've inspired a lot of people in the audience today. I know, as from an Accenture point of view, there's virtually everybody wants to come and work for Accenture. So you've definitely promoted the EVP there. Well done. But honestly, seriously, thank you for showing yourself and your truth, and demonstrating your real person, and not just Mr. Great Big CEO, which of course you are. But thank you for giving us real advice from the soul. It really means a lot. I think we're going to close it up now and make it about 25 past. So let's keep to time. I know I've got to respect your schedule also.
Yeah, I've got to jump off. I see people are already here. They're calling me to go to my next meeting already.
well, let's leave it there. I'm going to say thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for sharing your truth and your honesty. There's a huge amount of people that you've made a difference in their lives today. So thank you for your time, Vukani. We appreciate it.
Thank
Kate,
you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And well done, Kate. Next time I'm the one asking you questions.
Thank you for all your help. Yeah, thank you. It was really great.
Thank you very much. Cheers now.
Really appreciate it.
Bye. Kate, likewise, thank you very much. You put a lot of work into this, a lot of time into this. You were stunning. You led the interview. You led the questions. And I mean, what a great session. What a great 90 minutes. So thank you, Kate. I'm appreciative of your time and your schedule.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Thank you.
To everybody in the audience, I do hope you enjoyed the event, although the chat is telling me that you did, so that's great news. Imagine if the chat was like, no, it's terrible. But the chat's telling me it's great. I've been inspired today. I hope you've been inspired today. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. As I always pipe up, don't forget to download the GradStar app. I know for one that Accenture, I know for sure that Accenture are using it right now to find future grads, to find their future employees. So if you're not on it, then you're not going to be part of the new intake. That's what I reckon. Anyway, thank you, everybody. We're honored to feature everyone today. We're grateful for your support. And on that, thank you very much and goodbye.